"By sacred law, I belong to you now," the Apache widow told the cowboy who saved her Wild West story. Dust swirled around the legs of Jack Turner's horse as he rode slowly through the rough landscape. Jack was a cowboy, known in nearby towns for his steady hand and calm demeanor, though he had spent most of his life on the move. He had no family waiting for him, no permanent home, only the open trail, his horse, and the constant search for work or lost cattle. Today, his journey was peaceful, but there was an uneasy feeling in the air, a tension he could not ignore. In the distance, a column of smoke rose from behind a small cluster of trees. Jack squinted, shielding his eyes with his hand. Smoke in the middle of the desert could mean many things. Sometimes it meant settlers cooking their meals. Sometimes it warned of danger, fires set by accident or, worse, by people with ill intentions. Jack slowed his horse, careful not to rush toward trouble blindly. He had seen too much violence in his life to ignore a warning sign. As he drew closer, the signs of destruction became clear. Charred wood and blackened earth told him that whatever had happened here was recent. A chill ran down his spine as he noticed the small huts that had been reduced to ash, their roofs collapsed, and their doors hanging off hinges. Among the ruins, a young woman struggled to gather the few belongings that had survived the fire. Her long, dark hair was tangled with dust, and her eyes were wide with fear and sorrow. Jack could see the grief etched into her face. She wore simple clothes, torn and dusty, and carried herself with quiet strength despite the shock that seemed to weigh on her. Jack had seen hardship before, but there was something different about this woman, a resilience that made him respect her immediately. He approached slowly, raising his hand to show he meant no harm. "Ma'am," he said gently, "I don't want to scare you. My name's Jack Turner." "Are you hurt?" The woman flinched at first, but then her gaze softened. I am fine," she replied in a voice that was calm but edged with sadness. "Just gathering what I can." Jack nodded. He dismounted carefully and walked toward her, his boots crunching on the dry, cracked earth. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said. "It's not safe, not with what's been happening in these parts." She looked up at him, her eyes holding a mixture of gratitude and wariness. "I have no choice," she said quietly. "Everything I had is gone. I cannot stay where it is dangerous." Jack noticed a small bundle she was holding close to her chest. Inside were likely the only possessions she had left: clothes, a small blanket, maybe a few tools. He felt a pang of sympathy. Life in the desert was harsh for anyone, but it was especially cruel to someone alone and grieving. "I can help you," Jack offered. "I know the area. We can find a safe place to rest. You won't have to face this alone." The woman hesitated. Her lips pressed together as if she were weighing her options. Jack knew she must have faced danger many times before, and trust was not something given lightly. Finally, she nodded. "If you truly wish to help, I will accept. My name is Ayana." Jack extended his hand and she shook it briefly, a silent agreement passing between them. "Jack," he said, "it's a long ride to the nearest town, but we'll get there safely. I promise." As they began walking toward his horse, Jack kept his eyes on the horizon. The desert was wide and empty, but it was never truly safe. Raiders, bandits, and wild animals could appear at any moment. He helped Ayana mount the horse carefully, aware of her fragile state. She seemed small against the large animal, but there was a quiet strength in the way she balanced herself. Jack mounted his own horse beside her, scanning the terrain as they moved forward. The ride was slow and careful. Dust and heat surrounded them, and the sun bore down relentlessly. Jack talked to Ayana as they went, mostly to calm her fears and keep their minds off the long, silent stretches of desert. He asked her questions about her home, her family, and the small village that had been destroyed. She spoke softly, never revealing too much, but enough to give Jack a sense of who she was. "My husband," she said finally, her voice catching, "he was taken from us. The fire came after. I am alone now. I have no one to turn to." Jack listened without interruption, feeling a deep sense of responsibility. He had lost people he cared for in his life too, and he understood the hollow pain that grief left behind. "You're not alone now," he said firmly. "I'll make sure you're safe. That's all I can promise for now, but it's more than you have at the moment." They rode in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. The desert stretched endlessly, with jagged cliffs in the distance and a few scraggly trees offering shade. The air was dry, and Jack could see the strain in Ayana's posture as the hours passed. He urged her to drink some water from a small canteen he carried, insisting she stay hydrated despite her reluctance. Finally, as the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in orange and purple, they reached a small canyon where the wind provided a little relief. Jack helped Ayana down from the horse, and together they set up a small camp. He collected firewood and built a small fire, careful to keep it contained. Ayana watched silently, occasionally helping to arrange stones or add twigs. That night, as they sat near the fire, Ayana told Jack a little more about her life, her people, and the traditions she held dear. Jack listened intently, fascinated by her knowledge and the way she spoke of the land and her ancestors. Though they had only just met, a bond of mutual respect began to form, built not on words alone, but on the shared understanding of survival, courage, and loss. As darkness fully settled over the desert, Jack felt a sense of purpose he had not felt in a long time. He realized that saving Ayana was not just about protection. It was about honoring her courage and helping her reclaim a small piece of her life that had been stolen. Ayana, in turn, felt a quiet comfort in Jack's presence. Though she had been wary at first, she now trusted him enough to share her burdens, if only a little, with someone who seemed genuinely kind and capable. The fire crackled and sparks rose into the night sky, mingling with the stars above. For the first time in weeks, Ayana allowed herself to relax, and Jack felt a quiet pride in knowing he had made a difference, even if only a small one, in her life. They had survived the first day together, and both knew the desert still held many challenges ahead. But for now, they were safe, and that was enough. As sleep approached, they took turns keeping watch, Jack scanning the darkness while Ayana rested, and for the first time the vast, harsh desert felt a little less lonely. The next morning, the desert seemed even harsher under the rising sun. Jack Turner and Ayana packed their small camp, making sure not to leave any trace behind. The previous night had been quiet, but both knew the silence of the desert was often the calm before danger. Jack scanned the horizon as they moved, wary of any sudden movement. Ayana rode quietly beside him, her eyes alert, her hands gripping the reins tightly. They had only traveled a short distance when Jack noticed something unusual. A few miles ahead, dust rose from the ground in small, quick bursts. At first it seemed like normal desert winds, but the pattern was too erratic. Jack slowed his horse and motioned for Ayana to do the same. "Hold up," he whispered. "We're not alone." Ayana's eyes widened and she leaned closer to Jack's shoulder. She had learned quickly that the desert was unforgiving and danger could appear without warning. Jack continued forward cautiously, scanning the dust clouds. Then he saw them, a small group of men on horseback, their guns glinting in the sunlight. These were no settlers, they were bandits, known for raiding travelers and stealing anything they could carry. Jack counted at least 5 of them, and he knew they were armed and dangerous. "They're after something," Jack said quietly, his voice tense. "We need to move, but we can't outrun them on these horses if they catch a good wind." Ayana nodded. She trusted Jack, though fear gripped her heart. She had never been in a fight before, yet instinct told her this was serious. "What should we do?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Jack thought quickly. "We'll use the canyon up ahead. It's narrow and their horses won't be able to charge as easily. We can make a stand there if we have to." As they rode closer to the canyon, the bandits noticed them and began to chase. The sound of hooves pounding the dry earth echoed across the plains. Dust swirled around, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Jack urged his horse faster, guiding Ayanna carefully through rocky terrain. She stumbled once, but Jack's hand steadied her before she could fall. When they reached the narrow entrance of the canyon, Jack pulled his horse to a stop and looked back. The bandits were closing in, their laughter cruel and loud. He turned to Ayanna. "Listen to me carefully. Stay close and do exactly as I say. You can't get scared or we'll both be in danger." Ayanna nodded, swallowing her fear. "I'm ready," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. Jack spurred his horse into the canyon, the walls rising high on either side. The bandits followed, but their numbers gave them little room to maneuver. Jack knew the terrain better and used it to his advantage. He guided his horse over loose rocks and behind natural cover, making it difficult for the bandits to aim accurately. One of the men tried to take a shot, but Jack ducked just in time, feeling the bullet whistle past him. Ayanna watched, wide-eyed and tense, as Jack moved with skill and calm. Despite the danger, she felt a growing admiration for him. He was brave but not reckless. He protected her not only with skill but with thoughtfulness. "Keep low and stay behind me," he instructed as they pressed deeper into the canyon. The bandits were relentless, shouting and firing as they pursued. Jack could feel the heat of the sun and the tension in the air, but he refused to panic. He had faced danger before and knew that keeping a clear head was the only way to survive. He guided Ayanna around a bend where a large boulder created a natural barricade. They dismounted quickly and hid behind it, the bandits momentarily confused by the sudden obstacle. Jack took a deep breath and whispered to Ayanna, "Stay down. Don't move unless I tell you." Then, with steady hands, he returned fire, aiming carefully to scare them off rather than hurt them unnecessarily. The bandits hesitated, not expecting resistance from someone so seemingly unarmed. Jack's shots rang out sharply, and a few horses reared back in fear. Ayanna held her breath, feeling the danger pressing close. She could see the courage in Jack's eyes, and though she was terrified, she felt a surge of trust. He was fighting not just for his life but for hers, and that realization gave her a strange, comforting strength. The bandits regrouped, deciding to flank them, but Jack had anticipated this. He guided Ayanna to a hidden path that led up a rocky incline, giving them a higher vantage point. From there, they could see the bandits below, struggling to find their way through the uneven terrain. Jack kept a careful eye on them, using the rocks as cover. "We're not out of danger yet," he said quietly, "but we're smarter than they are. Follow my lead." Hours seemed to pass as they navigated the canyon. The bandits grew frustrated, their shouts echoing through the rocks. Eventually, they realized the chase was futile and began retreating, disappearing into the dust of the desert. Jack waited until they were far enough away before he let himself relax slightly. Ayanna exhaled, her body trembling. I can't believe we survived," she whispered. Jack gave a small, tired smile. "You were brave," he said. "Most would have panicked, but you stayed calm. That helped more than you know." She looked at him with gratitude and something else, a growing respect. She had heard stories of cowboys as loners, only thinking of themselves, but Jack was different. He risked his life to save someone he barely knew. She felt a quiet warmth inside, a sense that maybe, just maybe, not all people in this harsh world were cruel. As the sun began to set, painting the canyon walls in deep reds and purples, Jack found a small, sheltered spot to camp for the night. They gathered firewood and started a small fire, careful not to draw attention. Ayanna sat close, her hands still shaking, but she felt safer than she had in days. Jack handed her a canteen of water and some dried meat. "Eat something," he said. "You need your strength." She nodded, taking small bites while Jack kept watch. The canyon was silent now except for the crackle of the fire. The danger had passed, but the desert was never truly safe. Jack knew they would have to move early in the morning to avoid any other surprises. As night fell, Ayanna spoke softly, almost to herself. I thought I would never survive after the fire. I thought I was done, but you saved me. Jack looked at her, his expression serious but kind. We saved each other in a way, he said. You trusted me, and that made all the difference. You're stronger than you know. Ayanna felt a lump in her throat. She had lost so much, her husband, her home, her sense of safety. But for the first time, she felt hope. Jack had shown her that not everyone in the world sought to harm her, that some people genuinely cared. The fire crackled between them as they sat in quiet reflection. Jack thought about the road ahead, knowing that more challenges would come, but also knowing that together, they were stronger than alone. Ayanna leaned back slightly, looking up at the stars emerging in the night sky. She felt a bond forming with this man who had risked his life for her, a bond she had not expected to find in the desolate desert. Eventually, exhaustion took hold. They took turns keeping watch, Jack first, then Ayanna. Though neither spoke much, the silence was not uncomfortable. It was a shared understanding, a quiet connection built in the face of danger. The desert, once frightening and empty, now felt a little less lonely because they faced it together. As the fire dwindled, Jack allowed himself a small smile. He knew the journey was only beginning, but he also knew they had survived the first true test. Ayanna's courage, combined with his experience, had carried them through. And in the heart of the harsh desert, a partnership was quietly forming, one built on trust, respect, and the shared understanding that survival often required more than just strength. It required courage, compassion, and the willingness to stand together against the odds. Morning air was cool and fresh as Jack Turner and Ayanna continued their journey through the desert. The sun had just risen, casting a golden glow across the rugged landscape. The dangers of the previous day still lingered in their minds, but both felt a quiet determination. Jack led the way, scanning the horizon for any signs of trouble, while Ayanna rode beside him, more confident now after the events in the canyon. The bond between them had begun to grow, subtle but undeniable, built on trust and shared survival. The trail ahead was long and unforgiving. Rocky hills gave way to open plains, where the sun beat down mercilessly during the day and the nights grew bitterly cold. Water was scarce, and food even more so. Jack knew that surviving the desert required patience, planning, and careful observation. He kept a close eye on Ayanna, making sure she stayed hydrated and rested, while also teaching her how to read the land. "See those rocks over there?" he asked, pointing toward a ridge. "They can give us shade during the hottest part of the day, and if you listen closely, you can hear the water running below the surface. Nature always leaves a clue if you know how to look for it." Ayanna listened intently, absorbing everything he said. She had grown up learning some of her tribe's ways, but the desert was different, harsh in a way she had never known. Jack's experience and calm demeanor reassured her. She found herself opening up to him more, sharing small details about her life before the raid, about her husband, and the close-knit community she had lost. She spoke quietly, not wanting to burden him, but Jack listened with genuine interest, never interrupting, never judging. As the day wore on, they faced more challenges. The sun climbed high, turning the plains into a scorching expanse of heat and dust. Their horses grew tired, their steps slower with every mile. Jack encouraged Ayanna to take deep breaths, to drink water, and to focus on steadying her horse. "It's not just about moving forward," he explained. "It's about moving smart. One wrong step and the desert can be cruel." Despite the hardships, there were moments of beauty that reminded them both why life in the West, even dangerous, held its own magic. Jack pointed out a family of deer grazing near a hidden stream, their movements graceful and careful. Ayanna smiled, her eyes lighting up with a rare warmth. "It's amazing," she whispered. "Even in such a harsh place, life finds a way." Jack nodded. "That's why people like us keep going. We learn to survive, to find hope in small things, and to help each other along the way. By late afternoon, they reached a small valley with a patch of shade and a trickle of water. Jack led their horses to the stream, letting them drink while he searched for edible plants nearby. Yana helped, gathering wild herbs and small berries she recognized from her tribe's teachings. Together, they made a simple meal, cooking over a small fire. The work was quiet and focused, but it gave them both a sense of accomplishment. They were no longer just survivors. They were becoming companions in a harsh world, relying on each other not only for safety but for comfort and guidance. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jack and Ayana shared stories about their pasts. Jack spoke of his early life on a cattle ranch, of the long days riding the plains, and of the losses he had endured along the way. Ayana listened closely, occasionally asking questions, impressed by his resilience and honesty. When it was her turn, she spoke of her husband, of the traditions she cherished, and of the dreams she once had before tragedy struck. Jack listened quietly, his respect for her deepening with every word. Night fell, and the desert transformed into a cold and silent place. Stars dotted the sky, bright and clear, a reminder of the vastness of the world around them. Jack kept watch while Ayana slept, and later they switched. In the quiet moments, Ayana began to feel a sense of safety she hadn't felt since the raid. Jack's presence was steady and reassuring, and she realized she trusted him in a way she had never trusted anyone before. The following days continued in a rhythm of travel, survival, and careful observation. They faced scorching heat, sudden rainstorms, and tricky terrain, but each challenge brought them closer. Jack taught Ayana how to use the environment to their advantage, how to find shade, how to track animals, how to recognize safe drinking spots. In return, Ayana shared her knowledge of traditional healing, teaching Jack how to use plants for minor wounds and ailments. Their skills complemented each other, forming a partnership that was practical, but also deeply personal. One afternoon, as they climbed a rocky ridge, they paused to rest and take in the view. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a mix of sand, stone, and sparse vegetation. Ayana leaned on her horse, her hair tousled by the wind, and looked at Jack. "I never thought I would see another person I could trust again," she admitted softly. Jack looked at her, his expression calm but kind. "Trust has to be earned," he said. "And you've earned mine too, Ayana. You're strong and you've shown courage every step of the way. That counts for more than anything." For a moment, the desert felt less lonely. They were not just two people traveling together. They were partners in survival, and something unspoken was growing between them. Mutual respect had evolved into admiration, and admiration was quietly becoming affection. Neither spoke of it aloud, but both felt it in the shared glances, in the care they showed each other, in the quiet reassurance of being together in a harsh world. As the days passed, their journey brought them closer to a small town where they could gather supplies and rest. The town was a welcome sight, with wooden buildings, a general store, and a few other travelers going about their business. Jack led Ayana cautiously, keeping an eye out for trouble. They entered quietly, blending in with the townsfolk who were used to strangers passing through. Ayana was nervous, unsure of how she would be received. The townspeople were polite but cautious, their eyes lingering on her and Jack as if assessing whether they were a threat. Jack introduced himself simply and explained their situation, offering to pay for supplies. Slowly, the townsfolk warmed to them, appreciating Jack's honesty and Ayana's quiet dignity. She realized that not everyone outside the desert was hostile. There were people who would help, who would see them as human beings rather than outsiders. After securing food, water, and a few basic supplies, they left the town to continue their journey. The road ahead was still long, but both felt more prepared. Jack had taught Ayana much about survival in the desert, and she had shown him that hope and resilience could shine even in the darkest times. They had faced danger together, shared their fears and dreams, and slowly the bond between them had deepened into something neither could ignore. That night, as they camped under a sky full of stars, Ayanna spoke quietly, almost to herself. "I didn't think I could survive this world alone," she said, "but now I feel like I can face anything as long as you're here." Jack nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had felt the same truth for himself. Life on the desert trails was lonely and unforgiving, but with someone to trust, to share the burdens with, the world became a little less harsh. He didn't speak immediately, letting the silence hold their shared understanding. As the fire crackled and the desert night stretched before them, both felt a quiet sense of hope. They had survived the past dangers, and though more challenges would come, they knew they could face them together. In the vast, wild West, where survival was never guaranteed, Jack and Ayanna had found strength in each other. They had learned to trust, to rely on one another, and in the process a deeper connection had begun to form. A connection built not just on survival, but on respect, care, and the quiet understanding that some bonds were forged only in the face of true adversity. The days following their arrival near the river valley were quieter than their journey through the desert, but the peace brought its own challenges. Jack Turner and Ayanna spent their time assessing the land, gathering supplies, and learning to live with the rhythm of nature around them. The river ran gently through the valley, its clear water reflecting the sunlight and offering a small sense of comfort that neither had felt in a long time. Jack showed Ayanna how to fish, build a small shelter, and prepare the land for planting. She listened intently, her hands steady, learning quickly and offering suggestions from her own knowledge of plants and the environment. Life in the valley was far from easy, yet it gave them a chance to recover from the dangers they had faced in the canyon and the desert. Each day, Jack grew more impressed with Ayanna's resilience. Despite all that she had lost, her home, her husband, and her sense of security, she worked tirelessly, always focused on survival and rebuilding. He, in turn, shared more of his own life, stories of his family, of cattle drives, and of the times he had faced danger alone. Ayanna listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking questions, and slowly, their conversations moved from practical matters to personal thoughts and feelings. One late afternoon, after they had finished repairing a small section of the riverbank to create a better water flow for irrigation, Ayanna walked to the edge of the river. The wind rippled the water, and the golden light of the setting sun danced across its surface. She paused, looking into the reflection of the river, lost in thought. Jack noticed the quiet change in her demeanor. "Something's on your mind," he said softly, approaching her. Ayanna turned slightly, her eyes meeting his. There was a mix of strength and vulnerability in her gaze. "I've been thinking about everything that has happened," she said quietly. "About my husband, about my people, about the choices I have to make to survive." Jack nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He did not interrupt. He had learned that listening was often more important than speaking. "It's a lot to carry," he said, "but you're not carrying it alone anymore. You have me with you." She looked down, gathering a handful of river stones and letting them slip through her fingers into the water. "I've been taught that there are sacred ways to show trust and loyalty," she said slowly. "And I feel that what I feel for you is more than gratitude. You saved my life, but you also gave me hope, and in my tradition, hope is sacred." Jack's heart beat faster, but he remained calm, giving her the space to continue. Ayanna stepped closer to him, her eyes shining with quiet determination. "In my culture, there is a way to declare that you trust someone with your life, that you honor them with your loyalty, and I want to do that with you." She took a deep breath, her hands steady despite the emotion she clearly felt. "By sacred law, I belong to you now." Jack felt a deep weight in her words, understanding immediately that this was no casual statement. It was a declaration of trust, loyalty, and connection, born from tradition and reinforced by everything they had endured together. He looked into her eyes, seeing the sincerity and the courage it took for her to speak such words. He reached out, gently placing his hand over hers. "Iana, I accept that," he said softly. "I will honor your trust, your loyalty, and the bond you've offered me. And I promise to protect you, not just with strength but with care and respect." For a moment neither spoke. The river flowed gently beside them, the wind rustled the leaves, and the valley seemed to hold its breath. It was a quiet, sacred moment, the kind that marked a turning point in both of their lives. Iana's declaration had not been made lightly. It carried the weight of her culture, her experiences, and her survival. And Jack, who had faced countless dangers in his life, felt a deep responsibility settle in his chest. Over the following days, the valley became not just a place of survival, but a place of quiet connection. Jack and Iana worked side by side, tending to the small plots of land, gathering food, and caring for their horses. They shared stories, laughter, and even moments of gentle teasing, allowing themselves to enjoy small joys after so much hardship. Iana taught Jack about the plants that could be used for healing, and he shared his knowledge of tracking animals and reading the land. Together, they complemented each other's skills, forming a partnership that went beyond survival. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned shades of deep orange and violet, they sat together on a small hill overlooking the river. The air was cool, carrying the scent of the water and the distant trees. Iana leaned against Jack, feeling safe in a way she had not felt in years. "I never thought I would find someone I could trust," she said softly. "Someone who would see me as more than just a survivor, someone who respects who I am." Jack looked down at her, his expression warm. "You're not just a survivor, Iana. You're strong, brave, and wise, and I respect every part of you. More than anything, I'm grateful I found you in this world, in this vast and dangerous place." She smiled faintly, feeling the bond between them grow stronger. In that quiet moment, the past losses seemed to fade slightly, replaced by a sense of hope and connection. They were no longer two people who had survived tragedy. They were partners, bound by trust and mutual respect, and slowly, by something deeper that neither needed to name aloud yet. The days that followed were filled with hard work, but also moments of quiet intimacy. Iana showed Jack how to prepare traditional foods, how to make small herbal remedies, and shared stories of her people's customs and history. Jack in turn taught her the ways of the plains, how to recognize distant storms, how to track animals for food, and how to navigate the desert safely. Each lesson strengthened their bond, each shared task building trust and understanding. One morning, a sudden storm swept across the valley. Wind howled through the trees, rain pelted the ground, and the river swelled with sudden force. Jack and Iana worked together to secure their shelter, protect their supplies, and keep their horses safe. In the midst of the storm, they found comfort in each other's presence, leaning on one another for strength and courage. By the time the storm passed, they were soaked and exhausted, but their bond had deepened even further. They realized that in the face of life's challenges, they were stronger together than apart. As the sun rose the following day, painting the valley in warm, golden light, Jack and Iana sat by the river, drying their clothes and tending to the small garden they had begun to cultivate. Iana turned to Jack, her expression thoughtful. "I know we have faced so much already," she said, "but I feel ready for whatever comes next because we face it together." Jack reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Together," he agreed. "No matter what comes, we face it as one. I promise you that." In the quiet of the valley, surrounded by the flowing river, the rustling trees, and the wide-open sky, Iana and Jack felt a profound sense of connection. The declaration she had made, the sacred promise of loyalty and trust, had created a bond that was unspoken yet deeply understood. They had survived danger, learned from each other, and now shared a partnership built on respect, care, and mutual courage. The evening settled around them, and for the first time in a long while, both felt a sense of peace. The valley, once just a place of survival, had become a sanctuary. Jack and Ayanna had found not just safety, but companionship and trust that would guide them through the challenges yet to come. And in that vast, wild land, their bond was a quiet, enduring promise, a promise born of danger, strengthened by loyalty and made sacred by trust. The river valley had become more than a place of survival for Jack Turner and Ayanna. Over the weeks, it had turned into a small sanctuary where they could live, learn, and grow together. The simple life they built was filled with routine, hard work, and quiet moments of connection. Jack had helped Ayanna construct a sturdy shelter from the surrounding timber, while she had planted a small garden of vegetables and herbs that would provide them with food. Their horses grazed in a fenced area near the river, safe from the dangers that lurked beyond the valley. Every morning they woke with the sun, listening to the gentle rush of the river as it wound through the valley. Jack would check the traps he had set for small game, and Ayanna would tend the garden, her hands skillful in guiding the soil and nurturing the plants. Life was simple, yet it was demanding. The desert was unforgiving, and even here in the relative safety of the valley, they had to remain vigilant. But there was comfort in routine, and even in hard work, they found moments of joy. One morning, as Jack was mending a broken fence post, Ayanna approached with a small basket of freshly picked herbs and vegetables. "We'll have a good meal today," she said with a soft smile. Jack looked up from his work, returning the smile, and felt a warmth in his chest that he hadn't experienced in a long time. Their relationship had grown steadily, rooted in trust, respect, and shared experiences. It was no longer just survival. They were building a life together, brick by brick, day by day. As the weeks turned into months, they faced challenges, but each one strengthened their bond. One afternoon, a group of travelers arrived in the valley, seeking refuge from a sudden storm. Jack greeted them cautiously, while Ayanna prepared water and food for the weary travelers. The strangers were grateful, offering news from nearby towns and sharing stories of the land beyond the valley. Jack and Ayanna listened carefully, taking note of potential dangers and opportunities. Even in these moments of community, the couple remained a team, their decisions made together and their trust in each other unshaken. Life was not without its small triumphs and celebrations. When the first vegetables from Ayanna's garden were ready to harvest, they cooked a simple meal over the fire, enjoying the fruits of their labor. The taste of fresh food, grown by their own hands, was a reward that felt profound in its simplicity. They laughed, shared stories, and for a moment the harshness of the world outside seemed distant. These small joys reminded them of the resilience of life and the strength of their partnership. Evenings were a special time in the valley. After the day's work was done, Jack and Ayanna would sit by the river, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. They often spoke of the future, sharing hopes and dreams that they had never dared to voice before. Ayanna spoke of rebuilding her home and honoring her people's traditions in this new place. Jack shared his desire to find a place where he could belong, a home not defined by the trails he rode, but by the people he cared for. Together, they began to imagine a life that was no longer defined by survival alone, but by connection, hope, and the quiet happiness of building something lasting. One evening, as the stars appeared in the clear desert sky, Ayanna turned to Jack. "Do you ever think about the life we had before all this?" she asked softly. Jack paused, considering the question. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I think about it less and less. What we have now, it matters more. We've built something together, something real, and it's ours. That's worth more than anything we left behind." Ayanna nodded, feeling the truth in his words. She had lost much in her life, but in Jack, she had found a companion, a protector, and someone she could trust with her heart. She realized that survival was no longer enough. She wanted more, and with Jack, she could have it. Days later, they began to expand their small homestead. Jack worked on a simple fence to protect their garden and horses from wild animals, while Ayanna created small baskets and tools from local materials, making their life more comfortable. They planned a small area for cooking and a place for rest, organizing the valley into a functional and safe home. Every task they completed together strengthened their partnership, and each success was celebrated with quiet smiles, shared meals, and stories around the fire. Their bond grew even deeper when a small herd of deer appeared near the valley. Jack taught Ayanna how to track them safely, emphasizing patience and respect for nature. Together, they learned to hunt responsibly, taking only what they needed and ensuring the animals could continue to thrive. These lessons reinforced not only their survival skills, but also their understanding of balance and harmony with the land, a knowledge that both found humbling and rewarding. One afternoon, as they worked near the river, Ayanna paused to look at Jack. "You've changed my life," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Not just by saving me, but by showing me that life can be more than fear and loss, that it can be filled with trust and hope." Jack felt a lump in his throat, touched by her words. "And you've changed mine," he replied. "You've reminded me that even in a harsh world there's strength in compassion, and that trust can create something real. I never thought I'd find that again, not after all I've seen. But with you, I have." As the seasons changed, Jack and Ayanna faced small dangers, storms, wild animals, and occasional encounters with strangers, but they faced them together. Each challenge was met with careful planning, patience, and cooperation. Their bond, already strong, grew into a deep and unshakable trust. They were no longer two individuals navigating the wild separately. They were partners in every sense of the word. Winter arrived with crisp mornings and cooler nights. They built a small stone fireplace in their shelter, keeping the fire burning to stay warm. They shared stories of past winters, laughter, and memories, finding joy even in the simplicity of survival. Jack would often watch Ayanna as she worked, her hands deftly preparing food or tending to the fire, and he felt a quiet pride. She had faced so much hardship, yet she remained strong, resilient, and hopeful. Ayanna, in turn, observed Jack with admiration. His skill, patience, and unwavering care had become a foundation for her new life. She realized that their partnership was more than survival. It was love in its quietest, strongest form. Not the kind of love that was loud or flashy, but the kind that endured, built on trust, respect, and shared experience. One evening, as they sat together under the star-filled sky, Ayanna rested her head on Jack's shoulder. "I never thought I would find someone who truly understands me," she whispered. Jack wrapped his arm around her gently. "I've never met anyone like you," he said. "You've taught me patience, courage, and the meaning of trust. Whatever comes next, we face it together, always." The river flowed quietly beside them, carrying with it a sense of peace that neither had known for a long time. The valley, once a place of survival, had become a home, filled with small joys, shared labor, and the quiet satisfaction of building a life together. Their journey from the harsh desert to this sanctuary had been long and difficult, but it had forged a bond that neither danger nor time could break. As they drifted to sleep that night, the fire casting warm light across their small shelter, both Jack and Ayanna felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had survived hardship, faced danger, and learned to rely on each other completely. More than that, they had discovered something rare and precious, a bond built on trust, respect, and love. Morning came, and with it, the promise of another day in the valley. Jack and Ayanna rose together, tending their garden, caring for the horses, and planning for the future. Their life was not easy, but it was theirs. Each challenge they overcame only strengthened their connection, and each small victory brought them closer. They had built a home, a partnership, and a life together, and in the vast, wild West, that was a rare and precious thing. Through the seasons, through trials and small victories, Jack and Ayana remained side by side. They had faced the harshest realities of the desert and the dangers of the world outside, yet they had emerged stronger, united, and deeply connected. Their love was quiet but steadfast, built on shared hardships, mutual respect, and the sacred trust that had been declared in the canyon long ago. In the heart of the valley, surrounded by the flowing river and the quiet strength of the land, they had found more than safety. They had found home. And in that home, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, bound by the trust and loyalty that had carried them through every challenge and would guide them for the rest of their lives.